Okay, guys, this is part two, just covering this game against Peon. Um, and we just see where I make this really incredibly bad oversight with Elephant B1 and Black plays Pawn to D4. So, yeah, after that, basically my position's pretty close to lost. And we saw C takes, Rook takes. I mentioned C takes is also fine. It's also another way to win. I kind of went for this kind of desperado thing, ended up down the exchange. Got a little bit lucky that I got a chance to play this before Elephant takes, just in that now I'm only down the exchange. And then FC6, these are probably like slight mistakes on Black's part because I now got just a little bit of activity, and I got the chance to gang up on a c5 pawn, uh, and I don't have to take it right away. I'm going in with knight d3, and I got the chance to at least get this far. So in terms of material, I have a knight and two pawns for rook and an elephant, which is bad for white. It's very bad, but it isn't totally lost yet. So I've gone a little bit from probably where it's a total loss to I have some prospect for seeing about holding. Rook c6. So now I'm confronted with the position, and the question is, do I exchange rooks or do I try to keep one pair of my rooks on the board? So I've often said in Shatranj, if you're down like a minor piece like a Furzian or an elephant, usually you want to keep one pair of rooks on the board. Even if you're down a knight, maybe you keep one pair of rooks on the board. You don't need two pairs of rooks on the board, and you probably don't want two pair. Uh, but one pair of rooks is just enough. It's just the right number of rooks because you try to give a bunch of side checks and you try to just delay things a whole bunch without actually giving the other side enough material to say try to mate you, as you would probably end up getting if there are two rooks attacking your king. But I wasn't quite sure how to handle a situation like this, where I only have one rook and black has two rooks. And it's kind of interesting what happens to me over the next few moves. I decided I wanted to keep one pair of rooks on the board. So I play rook a5. And we see knight d6, knight d3, knight b7. Okay, this knight is attacking this rook, so okay, I go rook d5. Yeah, kind of keeping with my theme. I didn't see much point in playing rook b5 because then maybe rook b6, then rook d5, and so I saw okay, black's going to be able to force an exchange of rooks if I go that way. So I try to keep this rook on the board, but really to no avail. Like fe8, and now I just ended up having to take off rooks anyway, and now I've lost some time, and black penetrated to the back rank. So my play to try to keep the rooks on the board is totally unsuccessful. I haven't formulated a general rule for Shatranj yet in terms of what to do when you're down the exchange and you want to try to make a draw. But if this game is any indication, I think you do go ahead and allow one pair of rooks to come off, and you try to draw knight versus rook. So yeah, knight d3 looks pretty natural here. Okay, if black plays maybe this rook over, or maybe then we play fd4. On the exchange, white is going to get this knight on a fairly pretty square. King can be centralized. Maybe the king centralizes here. White has this pawn coming up. So, I mean, White's down material, but other than that, his position looks fine. You know, I'm not crazy about the fact that there's pawns on both sides of the board when I'm down the exchange. But there probably won't always be. Maybe if I can trade these pawns for you know, this pawn, and you know, maybe an elephant or something. You know, then I'm going to do great in terms of holding a draw with all of the pieces on one side of the board. So, um, yeah, when confronted with rook c6, I really tried to fight it and keep a pair of rooks on the board, and I think that was just the wrong way to go. Like even here, just rook, you know, rook takes, knight d3. Like even this just looks a lot better than what I did. You know, I'm at least kind of ish threatening knight b4. And then, you know, after the first hand drops back to defend the elephant, you know, I'm going to play bishop d3. Maybe my knight comes into d5 or something. You know, and yeah, if I had to just take this position again, I would just play knight d3. You know, takes, knight takes. This elephant's under attack, so you know, elephant back. I mean, knight c4 looks okay. First hand to d4 looks like a good move. Bishop d3 looks pretty playable. Oh, well, and actually, in this exact line, I have knight b7. I trapped this rook. So, yeah, black probably has to play knight c7 there instead. But okay. Yeah, knight c7. You know, I can go fd4, followed by king e3. That looks fine. I can play b4, followed by b5, maybe. Just gain some space. If I can drive the elephant away from a6, then I can maybe play knight c4, have some pressure on the d6 square. So yeah, so my position isn't bad, except for the fact that I'm down material, and that's what I should have gone for. But instead, I got this idea in my mind that I wanted to keep material on the board, which, you know, modern chess and shatranj are not exactly analogous in how you handle the material. In chess, when you're up material, they say, "Oh, trade, trade, trade." Even if you're up a pawn, just trade. In shatranj, that's just not really the case at all. If you have a bigger army, a lot of times you just want to keep more pieces on the board and try to actually use your extra piece in that attack to have a stronger attack. And a lot of endgames end up just being pretty drawish. So yeah, knight d3, I should just allow the pieces to come off. But instead, I did a lot of running around, and I just created basically the rooks came off anyway, but now black has a very active rook on c6. So I play knight f2. I'm actually going to pick up this g4 pawn. So that, you know, that I felt good about the fact that I'm going to pick up this g4 pawn. But black is kind of crashing through. Rook c1, okay, I grabbed this, elephant back, knight f2, because what else? Yeah, now this elephant is like really well centralized. So I spent like I spent all this time to gain a pawn that really wasn't participating in the game, the main game in any way. Wasn't doing anything about this kind of very leaky position that I have on the Fursian side. So that really wasn't a good use of time and resources on my part. I mean, I can hold my head up high and say, okay, now I have 1, 2, 3 pawns for the exchange and elephant. But you know, big whoop, not super great. So I needed a plan here, and the plan that I came up with was basically to play like knight d3, fd4, and fc5. If I lead with knight d3, it's not so bad. knight c3, okay, rook c2. I can play king d1, maybe if I want to drive this guy a little further out. Rook back, and then, okay, now I'm going to play fd4. All right, and so now I'm coming into c5. So, yeah, it looks like I have a way to kind of rebound from this. So, yeah, maybe I'm a little harsh on myself. I mean, all the maneuvering to win the g4 pawn. I mean, I'm skeptical of it now, but well, maybe I actually could afford this time because it looks like if I play knight d3, I'll probably get away with it. I guess I have to be a little worried about rook h1 as an alternative idea. So yeah, rook h1. It kind of gets interesting after knight to f2, and okay, rook takes h2, but now this rook is really sidelined. So knight f3 looks good there. A lot of squares under control. If rook here, then we have g4, maybe king f1. And, this stuff kind of gets kind of interesting. Rook's sideline. I guess also if I want a simpler solution, I can play king to f1. Just keep the rook boxed in. Knight to f3 comes next. And the rook is going to have to go to some really passive squares. So I mean, none of these positions are like great for white. White doesn't have winning chances, but in terms of how bad it could be, it's not so bad. But FD4 was a blunder because black hit it with knight c6, and silly me. The idea of knight to d3 followed by Furzan to c5 would be great, except the knight takes d4 is with check, and then king e3 or whatever. So either knight c2 or maybe also just rook c2. The idea of here and chops. I mean, I guess things can always get interesting after knight to e1. So I guess maybe we have to be a little bit careful, but but okay. So looking at this, so knight d3. So one thing, yeah. So knight takes, and then king up because we want to hit the knight, and then yeah, knight c2 check. King goes back, and then this rook can just step away. Yeah, and so now white has just lost that Furzan. So that's bad. And of course, knight d3. Yeah, knight takes d4 is probably best because rook c2. Then at least we get the Furzan coming into c5. In my position starting to look playable again. So okay, so yeah, fd4, knight c6, and like a coward, I retreat with fe3, but I think it's necessary. I mean, king d3. This just looks really bad after just bishop e4, hit the knight on d2. The elephant on b1 falls. So yeah, I mean this was just going to be curtains for me. So knight c6, fe3, and then bishop e4. So now I'm back to being totally lost on the scale of things. I play knight d3, hitting the rook. Rook c2, of course, so just pins this this knight. I mean, if I'd moved the knight away, then I just dropped the elephant. So that's why I try to create a little complications. Rook c2, of course, just to pin the knight. Then I play king d1, still just trying to complicate. And black plays rook to c3. Now this well, this knight's sort of tenuously being guarded. But if I move this knight away, then the b3 pawn falls. And it's starting to get just very, very lost. Very, very lost for white. I mean, I guess I can play knight f3, takes, king c2, just really trying anything. Then maybe rook over. And then I have king b2. Maybe I should have gone for that. Oh, but no, rook takes a4. What am I thinking? Yeah. So this is totally lost. Yeah, so not that. So I play fd4. This is just like a bogus move. And it's a desperado, but it actually works. It's really interesting here because Peon has a kind of a critical decision to make. And so he has 6 minutes in this position. Yeah, like eight seconds, well, plus the increment. So you know, about 23 seconds or whatever he spent on this move. Played rook takes d3. And this is actually super, super lucky for me. And the question is why? Well, after rook takes, bishop takes, okay. So now this other knight falls. Yeah, so it looks like this is totally lost for white. Like it looks like it's totally lost, but it actually isn't. This position is actually like one of those positions where maybe like a quarter of the time, if white plays well, white can expect a draw. So, so FD4, yeah. So the critical question is, how on earth can it be bad? There are two knights here, and black is going to give up. Black is going to give up exactly one rook for the two knights because I can't even take this because then my Fursan falls. So I would play Fursan, but I play Fursan to c5, and I'm just saving this Fursan, and then so after bishop b4, you think about what's the material here. Well, white has 3 pawns, none of which are very impressive, in exchange for a knight and in exchange for a knight and an elephant. So you think like automatic win for black. This actually turns out to be extremely difficult to win. And the reason is just this Fursan on c5 is really well placed. I've said this time and again, Shatranj is a game of Fursans. And if you compare my Fursan to black's Fursan, you think about the potential. This Fursan is doing a great job. It's going to support this king running up the board. It's going to support this b pawn running up the board. This Fursan is like completely blocked. It can't come out to g6 because of this. It can't really come to the e6 diagonal here because of the f pawn. It can't ever get out to b5 because of the a4 pawn. So the reason that this position is one of these ones that white can aspire to hold is just because the white Fursan is so good compared to its light squared counterpart. Well, what should Peon have played then? And I obviously can't do bishop takes because then I just grab this guy. So what is the move? Well, so FD4 is just like a desperado move. Just knight takes D4 here is best. And after knight takes D4, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to grab this elephant. That's the whole point of FD4 is to lure the knight away so I can at least grab the elephant and not lose this knight anymore. Yeah, and so here in terms of okay, what can we do with black? I mean, the first question is, okay, can we just play knight takes b3? So if just knight takes a6, now I think we get that off the board, and then just rook c4. We're hitting these two pawns. We're probably going to end up picking up this pawn, and we're going to end up with a situation here where after one of these pawns falls, there's going to be pawns on both sides of the board. Black is going to be able to save this a pawn, and using the rook, he's going to eventually be able to come in and crown this guy to a Fursan. And then he's going to have the Fursan pair. He's going to have a dark squared Fursan and a light squared Fursan. So ultimately, with a rook and then two Fursans, each of which is on a different color, that is going to be enough to weave a mating net around the white king, and to go through and just completely clean house, mop up all the pawns on this side of the board. So, so after knight takes d4, knight takes b4, knight takes b3. So I can't really go for this, takes, and rook c4. This is going to be a lost endgame. So what am I going to do? Well, instead of knight takes a6, I guess I can try knight to d5 here. That would be the try. So, the idea just being, okay, rook can't go here because of the elephant, can't go here because of the knights, and there's a double attack, but this isn't going to work because rook c1 check, just a little intermezzo, king e2 is forced. Well, and then just knight takes, and rook takes b1. Then that's completely lost. So, yeah, so fd4 is just a desperado move because I didn't want to go into, knight f3 and then start losing all my pawns. And if black reacts precisely with knight takes, knight takes, knight takes, here, and then rook c4, this endgame is going to be winning. But it's an interesting judgment call because you have to kind of have a feel for these positions and see how in that position black is going to win. But what ends up happening, rook takes d3 as an alternative looks really good too. But you have to be able to understand that after fc5, bishop b4, having an extra knight is not going to be enough to win. And that's just a very, very hard thing to understand. So I was just very happy when I got to this position because I thought, okay, I have some drawing chances. And let's see how it plays out. So I play king c2. I'm just going to run this guy down the board. King e7. All right, king c3. Bishop d6, and then b4. So yeah, I'm just starting to march. There is actually still a chance here for black to win this game, and it's at this moment right here because I mean, from a practical standpoint, I guess b4 technically is a mistake, but from a practical standpoint, after b4, most players are not going to actually find a move that still wins for black here. And Peon didn't see it. He just plays like knight e5. And I'll show you what happens. After knight e5, b4, I'm driving this back. Well, just h3. I'm just taking some squares, and I don't want to get hit with knight f3. Knight takes h2 if I'm playing the king up. Bishop f8. There's really nothing else. And black is, at this point, very unable to make good progress. Making progress is super, super hard. And you can see that now. Like now, if you see this position, if you had been presented with that position and you were comparing that position to the prospect of going into this line and just being up the exchange, you would take being up the exchange on an open, clear board with white's pawns falling every time. But you know, as it is, this is a tough judgment call to see, because you have to be able to envision that after rook takes here, fc5, that it's the route that this game is heading is towards this kind of total domination of the board by White's very outnumbered forces. Um, okay, but I said that there was a chance for Black to win the game, and it's right here. And I didn't see this during the game, and Peon didn't go for this either. Well, so I said that it's all about the Furzans, right? So it's all about the Furzans. Mine is controlling the d6 square. The way for Black to win is to stop me from having this control of the d6 square. And he just needs to do it for one move. He can deflect the Furzan so he can get the king to d6. So the move I'm talking about is bishop takes b4. Bishop takes b4, f takes b4, king d6. And here I'm finally like completely lost, because my king can't come up to support the Furzan because it's controlled by the elephant. So here I'm just out of moves. You know, I want to free my king up, so my Furzan has to go back, and just king e5. Now I'm completely lost. Black is just going to mop up all the pawns, and I'm actually facing a position where my king is completely stuck, and there's no route forward. So that's the kind of thing. It seems obvious when it's pointed out now, but you know, during a real game, you know, b4, if Black just assumes that he's going to win because he has an extra knight, you probably don't think to make this sacrifice. And then, you know, from White's point of view, you know, maybe I shouldn't play b4 technically, but you know, I can play like h3 or something. But from a practical standpoint, you kind of have to go for it. And I got lucky here in that I did manage to achieve now a completely dominating position for White. So knight e5, I went back, king g7, and then a5. You know what else? King c7. So White can't just completely sit on his laurels here, because Black is going to play the a6 move. a6, probably going to force b6, king comes to b7, and then this knight comes around to pick off the pawn. So I had to have a counter strategy for that, and I have to get counterplay. So what I do is fd4, knight back, bishop d3. All right, I'm just holding this, king b7, and then g4. So this is my plan. I'm going to just start rolling down the board, and I'm going to try to make as many Furzans as I can. I have a 4-2 pawn majority, and I want to make that felt. So Black plays a6, and here I make a mistake. I play b6, and just looking at the time, I didn't think very much about it. I just kind of played it. There's no reason for me to do that. It just creates a weakness on e5. So I can just play h4, continue with my plan. So then, you know, takes, bishop takes, knight b8. Knight c6 is coming, and I'm still going to drop this pawn. But Black doesn't have his own passer on the a file. And, you know, I can think about what the most precise way to play this is, but probably, you know, I'm either going to play g5 or I'm going to play e5 to try to break up this position. Probably g5. Ideas f takes, h takes. You know, okay, knight c6 comes out. And, you know, I'm just going to give this my best shot. I can make a Furzan. So if I play g6, I'm going to make a Furzan. The idea being takes, knight takes, g7. I'm going to come through. I'm going to make a Furzan. Elephant will probably save itself here. So I get one light squared Fursan. And black's pieces are a little bit uncoordinated. Maybe knight c6 to come back, try to threaten knight e7 check. King to c5 looks like a good try there. The trick is just I want to not lose this Fursan, so it is a little bit awkward here with these being sidelined, but I do have this Fursan coming in, hopefully 2 good squares. I'll be able to kick the knight a bit more. And what's my assessment of this endgame? Well, so this elephant can't be touched by either of these other 2 elephants. I have a dark squared Fursan. That's going to be very close to untouchable. This is really going to be my drawing piece. Dark squared Fursan is going to be very awkward to play against. And if I can bring this other Fursan in, if I can kick this knight, then I can get this other Fursan back to f5 where it holds the e4 pawn. And then I just play bishop d3 and I'll sit on the whole thing. Black's probably not going to be able to win this. The extra knight is fun to play with. You can kind of torture the other player, but white has 4 men, black has 4 men, plus kings, and I don't see with this dark squared Fursan. I do not see black being able to win this. And then of course e5 is the other move you want to look at. Probably f takes, knight c6, g5, knight takes a5, g6. This is all kind of similar stuff. Takes. Knight c6 or whatever. We see here, and then knight e7, king c5. Knight f5 is going to run into takes, and white's going to have 2 dark squared Fursans, so white can just put them here and here, and then black can't come through to make a draw. So bishop h6 is forced. fd6, maybe now. Knight f5, and we're going to at least pick off, so knight f5, promote, we're at least going to pick off the 1 pawn. And of course, if saves us, then f to f7, and then this pawn's going to fall anyway. So white's probably losing here. That's giving up too many guys. So yeah. So this line and then knight c6. This looks harder. Am I convinced that black's winning here? Maybe not convinced, but this looks like there's some chances to win. Yeah, so g5 is probably the right way to go, keeping a little bit in the center. So just kind of look at that again. Takes here. g6, takes, knight takes, g7. Yeah, this is just problematic for black because after bishop h6 and Fursan promotes, knight c6. Yeah, and there's going to be plenty of approaches like king c5, fh7, maybe even, well, now king d6 is going to drop that Fursan, but this is probably going to be a draw. So so with the most precise play here, so most precise move would be h4. Then after takes, knight b8. E5 is going to be slow, and I guess that makes sense. With e5, I'm just slow. I've lost 1 move in terms of getting up and promoting on the g8 square. So if I play g5 right away, I'm making progress towards that promotion goal immediately. After takes, and I promote in time so that when black has knight to c6, knight to a5, and comes back to e7, I will have already promoted and had a chance to step out of this fork. So okay, so that all makes sense. But instead, I played what was an inaccuracy. I played b6. Then after knight b8, h4, h6. Um, probably not necessary. I don't know. Knight c6, g5. Probably this is kind of similar to what we looked at last time. What we end up with: knight takes. What? No, actually, black played takes, knight takes, g6, takes, knight c6. Creates this kind of nasty threat. So then g7, elephant saves itself, and I can't promote because I'm going to end up losing that guy. So maybe I play like fc5 and try to hold the b6 pawn. I'm going to play king d6 next. So, in terms of like, where are we? Well, after ff7, we've at least managed to create a little more complicated game, and it's one that I could see black potentially winning, because black has a route to just completely blockade up the g8 square. So I'm probably not going to get to promote this guy. And my king penetration into d6 is not very impressive after something like elephant f4, king d7. I got to be cautious that I'm not just like walking into some wonky mating net all the time. And black has a pretty clear plan. He's just going to run this Farzan, or this pawn down the board, make a Farzan on the dark squares. And then once he's done that, it's super easy for him to come back with a Farzan, pick off the b6 pawn, then try to pick off the g7 pawn. So, I guess meanwhile, I don't really have any forcing line. I can't really force the pawn through. These squares are super well guarded by black. So I think I think black probably also missed a win here. b6 was inaccurate, and so it allows this this situation. And of course, I probably don't play g6 because of the takes, knight c6, and knight backline. Probably I have to find a different way to try to play this position. So, I play fc5, e5, e6, f6, f7, something like that. Try to take some more creative approach. So it is going to be pretty intimidating for black. I'm going to get a lot of pawns down here. Ultimately, black is probably going to end up sacrificing something like, the pair of elephants for the pawns, or maybe this elephant for the e pawn, and maybe this Farzan for that pawn. But the hope for black is that at the end of the day, he gets this a pawn down the board, and even if there's some total damage on the Farzan side, if he gets this pawn down, makes a Farzan, he can come back, pick off the b6 pawn, and he'll have really good winning chances having a knight and a Farzan against, maybe like a Farzan and an elephant, if those are the only two pieces I have left. So, so b6 was a weakness and a mistake. But then h6, I think, kind of gives things back to me, because now I'm just able to go ahead and take all the pawns off. And yeah, okay. So, and you see now the problem with having moved the pawn to h6, it takes away a square from the elephant. So I'm just threatening fg7 now and to win the elephant on f8. So this gets to be really dicey for black. Black goes ahead and he sacrifices this elephant, and black has to be careful because if I take the elephant and then I fix this h-pawn, and then I come back and win it, then I could actually see a situation where maybe I have 4 furs hands because I promote these 3 pawns. And so I have 2 dark square and 2 light square furs hands. That's going to be unfortunate for black because that's a lot of furs hands and they're going to be very mobile. I'm going to start bringing them down the board. So that's not what black wants. So he ditches with h5. But here I think I have a pretty clear route to a draw here. Now I could try to push past with g5, which I think is just very ambitious. So you see something like takes, Fursian takes, maybe knight c6, g6, and with the black pieces, what you've got to worry about is, if you push this, or with the white pieces, what you got to worry about, if you play pawn g7, then f to f7 comes. So after g6, probably just a5, and white has to push this pawn. So threatening to come in, but probably now you keep running. So this becomes just a very interesting race. So this pawn comes up, this Fursian over. White has to be very careful because pawn up, then this Fursian here actually is going to be a fork because the elephant controls e6. So Fursian up, it's going to be something like either king d6, king c4 that's just going to be bad because we're going to drop the g6 pawn off, so it's going to be king d6. And here Fursian to e6 is going to create some problems potentially. Maybe this Fursian has to go back in order to promote next. We could see a sack here, but there's probably no need. Black can either keep running with the Fursian and make his own dark squared Fursian, or he can play knight d4. The idea of actually coming back to pick off the h4 pawn. So we see Fursian and then knight f3, g6. This pawn drops. But at the end of the day, white only gets 3 Fursians, and black is going to promote these 2 pawns maybe, and that is going to mean black is also going to have 3 Fursians. So at the end of the day, black is just going to be up a knight. So this is going to be tough for white to hold. Playing white, I just want to be careful after h5. I'm not thrilled about the move g5 since it does fix this h4 pawn. And in a lot of lines, after king takes b6, there's going to be a route for this knight to come back around, pick off that pawn. So I didn't want to go in for that. But after g takes h5, I have a pretty clear route to a draw. And the way to get the draw is I'm going to eliminate this dark squared elephant, and I'm going to promote this to a dark squared Fursian, this to a dark squared Fursian, and then this to another dark squared Fursian. So I'm going to have 4 dark square Fursians. Black is going to have 1 dark squared Fursian. And then all I have to do after that is, if I just trade one of my 4 dark squared Fursians at some point for that other dark squared Fursian, there's no way that black is going to be able to win because these are light squared pieces, and this knight is not going to be able to control all the dark squares or enough dark squares to get some kind of weird checkmate. So king takes, I ate the elephant, and here they come. I'm promoting and I'm going to get my Fursians. So I keep them together, just guarding them. And then we saw knight b4 check, king c4, knight c2. I guess the idea is to go here or something, but it's not really clear. So I just keep going. Fg8. So black's going to try to block them, but it's not much use. I can just play h6, knight e3 check. This elephant is guarding this pawn, so it's really good. Here, king e5. I'm just going to get my king over to g6, and then I'm going to push. Or I'll push the f pawn. So king e5, knight b4. All right, I had to go back with king d4. Got to keep this elephant safe. Knight c6, and black did not find anything better here than to take the repetition. Which actually, I think from a practical standpoint, it wasn't so bad for black to take the rep, because the game just had not been going his way for a very long time. He started off with a crushing, absolutely winning position out of the middle game, and things had just drifted to the point where now it was looking incredibly hard to win. In terms of winning tries, if black wants to try to win, I think the route to do it is actually going to be a bit circuitous. So, knight c6, king d5. What I'd like to do for black is actually try to route this knight into h7 or something. But even that looks really bad, because actually that can end up losing, because f6, bishop f5 attacks the knight. So I don't know. Personally, yeah, actually I'm kind of out of ideas for black myself. And I did put this final position in Fairy Stockfish 14 with a neural net, and I think it read out like 0.00. Even without the repetition, even if black plays something else, like if black plays like a5 here, it just thinks this is going to be a draw. And yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I think black has pretty much blown the chances for a win. So this was a very, very tough game. In terms of the opening, certainly my rook lift against the Muraddad worked. I had a very nice position with white. I had a bunch of different ways to play. And then when there was all the tension in the center, I just completely cracked, and I didn't analyze anything. And, my calculation just kind of went off a cliff at the moment where I needed it. And I was completely losing, but I managed to kind of outplay Peon in order to get this really kind of spectacular position that occurs. Really, this position here is just an absolutely spectacular position, because white is down so much material. I mean, basically playing close to a knight down, and yet the white position is so dominating that it's very, very hard to claim that there's any real advantage with black. So if you find a way for black to play, get the win at this position here at move 62, if you find that, I would love to know. Maybe there's something that involves like some crazy Zugzwang or something, but from a practical standpoint, black probably wasn't going to win it. And black had some shots, but it was hard to find anything. So thanks to Peon for a great game, and I'll see you on the next one.